What's a record table?
So my husband is really into the 50s and we have a record player.
So it was a piece that was going to go that you could put the record player into?
Put it on top of and then also storage underneath for the records.
This is the plaintiff, Lisa. She says she hired the defendant to build her 5 pieces of custom furniture, and everything was to be built from walnut wood. All he could deliver on time was the TV stand. And when she said that was unacceptable, he didn't seem to care. She now wants her money returned. The defendant refuses, and she's here suing him for the return of her hard-earned $2,787.50. This is the defendant, Frank Crescente. He says he spent over $2,000 on materials for this wishy-washy woman's furniture. He was willing to complete the job for her, and he's not returning a dime of her money, because now he's stuck with a bunch of walnut. He's accused of driving a customer nuts.
All parties, please raise your right hand.
What you are about to witness is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in civil court. Both parties have agreed to drop their claims and have their cases settled here before Judge Marilyn Milian in our forum, the People's Court.
The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Milian is now presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Ms. Lisa, you contracted Mr. Crescente and Wood Visions, his firm, back in October of 2019 to create some furniture for you. What was the furniture he was going to build?
Correct. So we were looking to build a living room set and we wanted all custom pieces made out of walnut. And so we contacted Mr. Crescente because he seemed like a legitimate contractor and he seemed to have good reviews on his website. And we like to give our business locally. And so we needed 5 pieces for our living room: 2 bookcases, a TV stand, and a coffee table and a record table.
What's a record table?
So my husband is really into the 50s and we have a record player.
So it was a piece that was going to go that you could put the record player into?
Put it on top of and then also storage underneath for the records.
Okay, so 2 bookcases, a TV stand, a coffee table, and a record table. Okay.
Correct.
And how much were you going to pay total for all these matching pieces?
$5,575.
Okay. So is there actually a written contract between you guys in October?
Yes, there is a written contract between us in October.
Okay. So here is the letter that serves as a contract. It's got your signature on it. It's got his signature on it. And it says, in fact, what you're saying, which is 2 bookcases, a TV stand, the dimensions of everything. You out of walnut to the specifications listed. Had you given him pictures or anything? I'm curious. Like
I did.
Give him guidance
so
or what?
We saw furniture online that we liked, but it just wasn't big enough for our living room, and we wanted to go with a modern mid-century vibe. And so we contacted Frank because we wanted him to kind of do a copycat, but just make it bigger for us so that it fit in the space that we have.
Okay. Did you submit the pictures so I can see what we were talking about, or not really?
I did submit the pictures.
Give me 1 second, please. That's really pretty. So you wanted something like this. You wanted it in walnut, but you wanted it to your specifications and bigger. And I guess Hayneedle didn't have it. That's
Right.
a coffee table. There's a TV stand. Gotcha. In this letter, does it say how long he has to build it? All work is to be done in a timely manner. Right.
In a timely manner, correct. And what we had verbally discussed, unfortunately, I did not demand for it to be written in the contract, but we had
You should
verbally
always
discussed
demand for that to be written in the contract.
Lesson learned.
Yep.
We had verbally discussed by Christmas time.
Okay. Well, what happens by Christmas time?
So actually, Frank left me a voicemail that you also have access to, that it was November 19th, that he told me he was running a little bit behind and that he was going to be in his shop full time and that he would have it done by the beginning of January, which I thought was reasonable.
And then what happens in the beginning of January?
In the beginning of January, he made more excuses. The furniture still was not completed. And by the end of January, I found that he was not returning my voicemails and not returning my emails.
So when did you decide that you wanted your money back? What did you say as a result of him not answering you, according to you?
So by late February, I started to get very suspicious. And I emailed him and I said, please, Frank, send me some pictures, send me an update, anything having to do with my furniture, because
you had already paid half of the deposit. He had, at that point, $2,787.50 of your money, correct?
Correct. And I had an empty living room, so it was difficult to live. So he had told me that he had had a family emergency and that he was out of his shop for 2 weeks. And I said, that's very understandable. Like people have family emergencies. And so when he returned from his family emergency, he assured me that he was working full-time in his shop and that he would deliver each piece by piece, and that the TV stand would be to me in March. And so February came and went, March came and went, and he again was not responding to me, and I did not have any furniture. I had requested pictures of the furniture. I had requested to come out to his shop to see his progress, and I just wasn't getting any responses from him. So finally, on April 5th, he emailed me. I think it was April 5th. Let me just double check. Yeah, it was April 5th. So on April 5th, he sent me the email saying that he was not going to complete all of the pieces of furniture, and that I should take the one piece, the TV stand, for the 50% deposit that I had already.
What? Hold on a second. Lisa, sorry I missed your call. As for your furniture, I will have the TV stand done hopefully this coming week. However, I'm not going to be able to build any of the other pieces for the cost I have given you. The work is very tedious. I will complete the TV stand for the money you've already paid. No kidding. Sorry to change things midstream, but truthfully, each piece should be $4,000 each to make. I will be in touch later this week. To which you respond, unfortunately, Frank, that is outside what we agreed upon in our contract, and I would like to request a full refund of my deposit. I am unable to use a TV stand without the other pieces we discussed and agreed upon in our contract. I think it is unfair for you to offer to give me one piece of furniture for $2,787.50 after we gave you a deposit that was based on making 5 pieces of furniture. Please send me a check, you're much more polite than I would be, for $2,787.50 since you are unable to uphold your part of my contract. And then several emails after you, Mr. Crescente, inquiring minds want to know. Talk to me. Tell me your side of this story.
Well, yes, I was contracted to build the 5 pieces of furniture after working on them for a number of months. The work, the curves, as you saw in the bottom, was a very tedious process that, unfortunately, I don't know things until I start building. They're one-offs to me. So, the thing was taking a long time to build, and I just...
What was so complicated about it? I looked at it. What was so complicated? What was taking so long to build? But tell me, what was so complicated about it? I'm going to look up the photos. Let's look at the photos, and let's see what's so complicated about that. Because if you're a carpenter, tell me what's complicated about that.
Okay, so if you see the curves on the top of the pieces and the bottom of the pieces, it looks simplistic to your eye, but it's very complicated to me.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying, the curve. Okay, but the curve wasn't a surprise, right? You gave a quote.
No, it wasn't a surprise.
You're an expert. Yeah. You've been doing this. How long have you been a carpenter?
15 years. I'm an artisan, yes.
15 years. An artisan. So how is it you don't know how much trouble it's going to be? And how is it you don't quote that correctly? And if you don't quote that correctly, how is that a Ms. Lisa problem as opposed to a Wood Visions problem?
The thing is, I was willing to complete the project. She said, take your time, was the exact word she used in the beginning.
And you did, didn't you? You took your time, because she gave you half the deposit in October, and we are now in April. When you end up saying to her, I'll tell you what, this took too long, I've changed my mind. I'm going to charge you $2,700 and something for a coffee table without any matching furniture.
Right.
That's you saying that. On what planet do you think there's a judge that's going to say, sure, buddy, change the whole deal, give her a coffee table for $3,000 with no matching furniture?
I didn't say I wasn't going to make the matching furniture. I never ever said that one time.
Yes.
Oh, let
I
us
just
see.
said
Hold
that it's
on
gonna
just a
cost
moment.
me
Oh,
more
yes, you
money
did.
to make
Oh, yes, you did. Oh, yes, you did. First of all, if she was tired of waiting after 6 months, let me tell you that I would find that 6 months isn't timely, okay? Especially when you left her the following audio in November. Let's hear it.
Hey, Lisa. Good morning. It's Frank over at Wood Visions. I got your message yesterday. I got all the walnut beautiful sitting in the shop. I'm just wrapping up some closets, and then I'm going to start working on your stuff probably the end of next week. So I would say we're still a few weeks out from me getting it done, but it's going to be beautiful. I can't wait. So I just wanted to call you back and
neither
let you
can
know
she.
an update, and I'll give you a call back probably next week, let you know where I'm at with it. Okay? Have a good day. Thanks.
Okay, so you tell me what has changed for a 15-year carpenter with that kind of experience that you would tell her in November, it'll be a few weeks, and then when she waits December, January, February, March, April, okay, 5 months, she's so patient, so patient. I would never have been that patient, ever. So you tell me, okay, what changes that would cause you to send the following email. Lisa, let's read it again, shall we? On April 5th, you say to her, Lisa, sorry I missed your call. As for your furniture, I will have the TV stand done hopefully this coming week. However, I am not going to be able to build any of the other pieces for the cost I've given you. That's you saying I'm breaching. The work is very tedious. It's taking a lot of my time. I will complete the TV stand for the money you've already paid. So not only are you a jerk who gives her a price and then turns around and says, guess what? After 5 months of you patiently waiting, I ain't going to do it. 5 months that you have no furniture in your living room. But no, Mr. Crescente of Wood Visions decides he's going to one-up that. And he's going to look you right in the eye and say, but guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to foist a coffee table with no matching pieces and tell you that you're going to pay $2,787.50 for a coffee table. I'm going to impose a new contract on you, girl, and you're going to eat it. What would make you think in a million years that I would ever allow that that would be fair or that would be appropriate after they waited 6 months for you? What? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Well, if she wanted her furniture and it was custom made, when you have a custom made job, some things happen in the midst of it. So we were just trying to renegotiate.
You know what happened in the midst of it? You put her
saying.
on a back burner. You put her on a back burner because she was nice. That's what you did. Since she's nice, then she could just wait. And then you took the people like me who were yelling at you and saying, I'm going to take you to court. And those are the people you worked for. And then you have the nerve, not just to say, listen, I'm so sorry. I just can't do it, which is a breach. You have the nerve to say, and I'm keeping your money. And if you want a coffee table, you can have it for 50% of the contract. Have you lost your mind? No. $2,787.50. Verdict for the plaintiff.
Wow, the judge just let the defendant have it. Let's see what he thinks about that. Mr. Crescenti, what are you thinking right now?
I'm not thinking too much. She just said what was on her mind. She was a little rough, but, whatever.
Whatever, she let you really have it, but for a good reason. I mean, you were not very good to the client. Lisa was extremely patient. Wouldn't you agree?
She was. Yes, she was.
Yeah, you don't have much to say. I guess if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't say much either. Anyway, you got to pay that money back. $2,787 goes to Lisa. Hey, Lisa, how do you feel? You're happy.
I'm happy. I'm happy that justice is served against unscrupulous contractors who think that they can win one over on people that have hired them to do a service.
What about the furniture now? Have you changed your plans altogether?
I'm going to have to hire someone else who is reliable and responsible and has more than a few reviews on Google to complete the furniture for me. But now that I have my money back, I can do that.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
congratulations. You are going to get your
Thank
money
you.
back. Yeah, good enough. You're welcome. Well, let's see what the judges have to say about this. Time for another session of After the Verdict.
Every time people enter into a contract, Marilyn, they're gambling. One guy's gambling, I'm going to be able to make some money, and the other guy's gambling, I'm going to get goods or services that matter to me. And you can't rewrite the contract unilaterally by yourself.
What nerve!
When things go south on you, when it takes longer than you think, right?
I mean, it's not even like the guy said, you know what, I'm so sorry, give me more time. And she said, I'm pulling the plug, I'm sick of you, I've been waiting 6 months. It said he had the nerve to say, I'm not going to abide by the contract.
Right.
I underbid this.
Right.
So you're going to eat it. And I'll tell you what, I'm keeping your deposit, and I'm going to finish the table any minute now. She never gets a picture of it. It doesn't matter. She wanted matching furniture. That's the deal.
Right.
And then he decides that 50% of the deposit is going to cover a coffee table.
Exactly. And then he decided to table her complaints and just kind of put that aside for a while because, as you said, she probably wasn't quite angry enough,
That's right.
quite nasty enough,
That's right.
etc.
That's right. And that's why I was angry and nasty enough for her.
Right, because her politeness hurt her in the end, in a sense, in that
Poor
regard.
thing. I hate that. I hate watching people take advantage of other people just because they can.
Right. And we see
Or
it
they
all the
think they
time,
can.
Unfortunately.
He just kept putting them off because they were nice.
Right.
That's what happened.
Well, sometimes being nice puts you on the back of the line, I guess.
Yeah, I tell you that all the time.
Sally from Florida wants to know this. If I sign a contract for some pool services, but change my mind, can I cancel the contract I just signed if it's the next day? So a lot of people think this, Sally, that you have a cooling off period if you sign a contract. Now, you do not. If you sign the contract, you are stuck, with one exception. A lot of states say that if it's a home solicitation contract, in other words, if somebody comes to your door, knocks, and then convinces you to buy something and sign a contract, you would have 3 days to change your mind and undo the deal. But if it's not home solicitation, generally you're stuck. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case are inside the courtroom.
This is the plaintiff, William Harrell. He says the defendant was a tenant of his, and he was also a nightmare. The guy wrote, "This place floods," in soap on the exterior of the windows when he left, and he punched a hole in the shower door. He won't be taken advantage of by the likes of the defendant, and is suing him in this court for the $995.19 he's owed. This is the defendant, David. He says the plaintiff has been his landlord for over 8 years and forced him to let people see the place because he was selling it. Like 50 people came every day and none of them wore masks. Then he tried to force him out because he had a cat, which he always had. Oh, this lousy landlord money? No way. He's accused of trashing the joint.
All parties, please use your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff rented to the defendant and says the guy was a terrible tenant and vandalized the place before he left. But the defendant claims he lived there for 8 years and treated the place like it was his own. So he owes the plaintiff nothing. It's the case of leaving a real mess behind.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Harrell, you are suing Mr. David, your former tenant, for $995. You kept his security deposit, so you say your damages are actually $1,495. You're suing him for 2 months' rent because you say he breached your lease agreement, and so you're entitled to that liquidated damages. Talk to me. Tell me what happened here.
Yes, Your Honor. The defendant rented from me for approximately 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Over the course of those, actually, I inherited him when I purchased the property. He lived there and stayed on for approximately 8 years. Never until this year had the defendant ever had a pet or made mention of a pet. He had brought up, I was there in January when we signed a new lease and noticed that there was a cat inside. And he advised me that the cat was in there because he was protecting it from the storms. So it was storming outside, and I said, well, you can't have a cat. You know, it's not in your lease agreement. And we signed a new lease agreement at that point, which was really a carbon copy pretty much of every lease we'd ever signed, which stipulates if you can have a pet, I have to approve it, consider that as part of rent and security deposit. in March of this year, roughly 2 months after he signed the new lease, I had put the property up for sale. And one of the buyers that came through that was under contract, they wanted to see copies of all of my leases. And in that process, I showed them the leases, and they asked why there was clearly a pet living in his unit. They wanted to know why there was no pet, or why there was a pet and no pet addendum to the lease, as the lease indicates. And I told him it was an unauthorized pet. So I went back and said, we need to make this right, because I'm selling the place. And that is, I'll let you have a pet. You just either have to pay for it, buy a security deposit and higher rent, or just get rid of the pet, which was never authorized.
Go on.
So upon advising the defendant, and I advised him by text message, the defendant responded back to me over the course of several days, a lot of different messages, ultimately stating that he was going to be leaving, and that he was leaving in 3 days by the end of the month.
Okay, so I would like to understand, I know you have a lease, and in the lease, there are a couple of things that is really what you're suing about. The lease says, let's see, renewal term and termination. Early termination of the lease is allowable with 2 months' rent as early termination fee. Okay, so your position on this is, I don't know why this guy left. He left in the middle of a lease. He owes me these 2 months.
I never told him he had to leave. He made the choice to leave.
What did you tell him? What did you tell him? That his rent was going to go up $100.
I told him that if he wanted to have the cat, he'd have to pay a security deposit, and he'd have to pay additional rent for the pet. Yes.
Okay, Mr. David, let's you and I talk, because you think that this is all a pretext, right? You think he's mad because the realtor wanted to parade a lot of people into the place because he decided, by the way, when did you list the property for sale?
I believe it was in March.
So where are you guys from? Pinellas County, which town?
This is Treasure Island, Florida.
Okay. Mr. David, Mr. Harrell's realtor, according to you, wanted to bring people in once things were heating up and complicated because of COVID. Talk to me and tell me what happened there.
You know, it was all a surprise to me that Mr. Harrell was even putting the place up for sale. Me and Mr. Harrell.
That's none of your business, though, is it? Oh, you mean you're just surprised because you were friends? Right, because you were friends, you were surprised. Well, let me ask you, Mr. Harrell, do you live on the property too, or no?
No, I do not.
Okay, would you guys socialize, or you mean I've been there forever and we are very friendly? Is that what you meant?
Your Honor, Mr. Harrell and I were friends, and we've been to several outings and concerts together. We both enjoy
so you'd
music
actually
and festivals.
Socialize. Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Been to his home, been his boat, been fishing, so forth and so on.
Okay, so you were surprised that he didn't say, hey, buddy, I'm going to sell the place. So then what happens?
Well, once that had happened, the realtor seemed like she was under the gun because of the COVID situation, that she had so much time to bring so many people in within, I would say, from March 4th until March 22nd. There was a barrage. It must have been 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. There must have been anywhere between 3 to 9 people a day for a 5-day period for about a 2-week long period. With losing my job, with him putting the place up for sale, with nobody coming in with any protection, no Lysol, not taking their shoes off, in any way an ethical situation when you're selling a property and showing it during this world pandemic, at least put a mask on. I don't know what they were doing in my place, touching door handles.
But why couldn't there be some kind of agreement reached where people who walked in had to have masks and people who walked in had a Purell? I mean, it's very unsafe for the realtor to be bringing them without any masks by that point. I get it.
Your Honor, I have severe asthma. I had reached
So at any point, do you or the other tenant, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Do you call him and say, hey, dude, you can't bring strangers in here all day and night? I mean, I understand you, Absolutely. Mr. Harrell, you have a time constraint. You want to try to sell it before the world crumbles. But I understand him too.
Your Honor, in the beginning, I was just abiding to what Mr. Harrell wanted. I was just trying to appease everybody and just, let him sell his place and just try to move on with this situation with whoever the new landlord would be. And then it got to the point after the 15th, it just got more and more. The place was pending for sale. The sale fell through on the 22nd. And after the 22nd,
Mr. Harrell, give me a second, Mr. David. Mr. Harrell, why did the sale fall through?
The contract fell through because the investors that were buying it, their source of funds dried up because of the concern of COVID.
Here's the thing. I'm looking at a text from you to David at 6:50 a.m. on March 24th. And what you say is, David, I respectfully acknowledge your position regarding showing the apartment. So you must have at some point talked to him and said, I don't want you to show the apartment anymore, correct?
Yes.
He had sent me a text the night before.
I don't have that text. My first text is this one. So if he sends you a text on March 23rd, do you remember what the text said? I don't want you to bring people here, or do you have it? Can you read it to me?
I have it. Let me find it here. Bill, I am sorry to hear about your contract pulling out at this moment. We all agree that it's not a good time for strangers coming in and out of our houses with a virus going on. I am a candidate with COPD, and I am susceptible to this virus. I am under house quarantine, and I am having no strangers come in at this moment. You got the girl next door working at home in quarantine, and nobody agrees at this moment with people coming in the property with this virus being an epidemic. I think our health is more important than money at this moment. We be patient and we will do what we can to help you in any way. But at this time, I don't think it's cool. And that's when I responded that I would do.
David, respectfully, I acknowledge your position regarding showing the apartment. And then, for the first time, we will work around that. I also need to address another issue. One of the issues with the last buyer was leases and the pets on site. It was noticed your apartment did not have a pet addendum, pet deposit, or charge extra for the pet on site. Those prospective buyers saw that as an opportunity to hold you in default of your lease agreement. And then you cite the clause, which they could have used to evict you, as this would have put you in default of the lease agreement. So accordingly, I need to clean that up immediately. You and I both know that that sale did not fall through because of a cat. I will approve you to have a cat as long as certain criteria is met. You must sign a lease with a pet addendum. As part, you will be subject to a pet deposit of $200, as well as a monthly rent increase of $100 for pet rent. If you agree, we will need to get this signed within 48 hours and payments made accordingly. The other option is that you remove your cat. That also would be subject to 48 hours to do so. How many years have you had that cat, David?
Ma'am, the cat was on the property when Mr. Harrell purchased the property. It had lived on the property for 7 years under my car. So with that being said, if you see the picture of the house, it has a small courtyard. It liked his son. It's the reason for that cat.
Who doesn't?
Right
oh my
there.
God. Is that the cat? What's the cat's name?
So, Little Mama. There's a reason behind this. There's the little courtyard where it used to sun. The reason that cat is there, there were two cats. One of them was run over right in front of the house. So that cat slept at my door for the last 7 years on a mat outside. And I brought it in during hurricane storms or attacks. Mr. Harrell knew about this cat.
Mr. David, look at me. Look at me. Mr. David, look at me.
Yes.
That's your cat. I know it's
ma'am.
your cat.
Yes.
I feel it. It's your cat. It's in your house. Technically speaking, he is right that something new needs to be addressed. The problem, Mr. Harrell, is that you send him a text saying you got 48 hours, you got an addendum, and then you on your own decide that the rent increase is going to be $100. Is there anywhere in the original lease, or I'm sorry, in the renewal lease that he signed in January, that says what the pet rent will be? Or does the lease say, I have to approve the pet and we have to talk about what the pet rent will be?
It says specifically, no pets allowed unless the pet is medically necessary, and landlord is presented with at lease agreement execution with a document validating the necessity of the tenant by signed physician. Pets will only be allowed with a pet addendum to this agreement. A pet deposit and or additional rent may be required at the landlord.
How much additional rent, Mr. Harrell? If you're suggesting to me, Mr. Harrell, that the clause that says a pet deposit and or additional rent may be required at the landlord's sole discretion, that you could just make up it's going to be another $100, and if you don't do what I say, you're in breach of the lease. That's not how that contract is going to be read by any judge in America. You have an absolute right to have a pet addendum and to say this is what I want if you want to keep that pet, or you got to go, which is clearly the implication of you have 48 hours. What you don't have a right to say is, I've declared it's $100, and if you don't pay it, you owe me 2 months' rent because you have violated your lease. That's what you're doing in this case, and you don't have that right. But more importantly, I want to read these texts because as soon as you send them, the other option is to remove the cat. That would also be subject to 48 hours. Please advise how you would like to address this, Bill. This isn't because you're appalled that there's a cat that's been there for all this time. This is really because Mr. David had the hubris to send you a text the night before saying, no one can come in here. And then you send this saying, hey, you're in violation. The people noticed that you were, that didn't happen. You and I both know that. In fact, according to you, Mr. David, they say, hey, does a cat come with the building? Because they didn't mind. That didn't happen. And then what's David's answer? Bill, why are you strong-arming me now in times like this? Bill, we've been friends for over 7 years, and I've been a loyal tenant to you. I am not trying to make things difficult. The girl next door also is in quarantine with asthma and working from home. Everything is shut down in the area. I mean, all we're asking for is after the 15-day quarantine, it would be fine. Kim calls us at 10:30 at night to let us know the contract failed and that they want to bring more people. I completely understand and respect that you want to get rid of this place. I'm not trying to hinder that in any way. You say, I'm pulling this animal stuff. You mean you pulling this animal stuff on me. It's just a little below the belt. So what? Do you want me to say, if I don't pay the $300 for pet fee, you want to evict me? This is in March where people are suffering. And did you lose your job or were you working from home, Mr. David?
Ma'am, I did lose my job due to COVID-19. I'm a bartender.
When did you lose your job?
Right around March 15th.
Yep. Bill, I would appreciate it if we could talk at least. Give me that much. Here's the guy over and over texting you, trying to get you to talk to him. I've known you too long. You've been too good to me. And you have me in an absolute shambles in tears right now. I mean, here's a human being who's really kind of freaking out over the situation. And you have a chance to be a decent man and just text a guy back. Just talk to him. And instead, what you've decided is that you're not going to answer a single text. Nothing. Silence. Are you guys talking on the phone or anything during this time, or he's just not talking back?
Just silence.
I'd like you to know something. Back in March, Governor DeSantis, the governor of our state, decided that not a single landlord could evict anybody for non-payment. And you know what this fellow could have done? He could have said, I ain't paying no cat addendum. I ain't paying no rent. And do you know what you could have done, Mr. Harrell? Not a darn thing. So instead of having a jerk who does that to you, and you're well within your rights, this is your place, okay? You let everything simmer there. The guy's freaking out. He's like, come on. And you're like, I guess you want me out. You're not answering him, and the guy leaves. This guy is a good man. He's been there 8 years. He's been, you've been friends. You've gone to stuff together. He's sitting there trying to work it out, and you're just treating him like garbage at a time when people should have all been kumbayaing and holding hands and helping each other. But at the end of the day, Mr. Harrell, it's your place. If you don't want him there with the cat, and you're telling him that, then he leaves with the cat. But then you sue him for violating the lease by breaching early? No. So I find that you're the one who told him, hey, we're not sticking by the lease because you got to pay me all this more rent at a time when you know that this man lost his job as a bartender because you know he's a bartender and he couldn't possibly pay it. So instead of being a jerk and saying, nye, try and catch me, what he did was leave. He did not breach the contract by leaving. And you have every right to say, you've got a cat, I don't want you here anymore, which is kind of what you said. But when you say that, don't then rewrite history and claim you owe me 2 months because you breached. But certainly don't act like that in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, for the love of God. Have a little humanity.
I never told him.
Verdict for the defendant.
Gotcha.
Well, the plaintiff has not provided in this case, and I'm sure he's rather upset. Let's talk to him. Mr. Harrell, what do you think about the judge's decision?
I don't agree with the judge's decision. It is a violation of the lease, and that is what happened.
So anyway, you kind of come off looking like a heel here, you know, with the pandemic and everything. How do you respond to that kind of charge?
I think
feel
the
bad?
proof is in the performance. Not at all.
Not at all. Did you sell the building, by the way?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, good for you. All right. Well, David, you're happy as a clam. You really are enthusiastic about what just happened. Talk to me.
Absolutely. I was a loyal tenant for over 7 years. Mr. Harrell was actually a very good friend of mine. I am just appalled the way he tried to pull this all together. And with that being said, let's just all be safe.
Did you find a good place to stay where you're living now? And what about the cat? Did you take the cat and keep it?
Took the cat, brought it to my family's house, and I'm currently staying with a girlfriend of mine, and I'm also watching over my elderly mother.
All right. So things are okay with you. Well, listen, congratulations. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Well,
And
thank
that'll
you
wrap it
very
up
much.
for this case. Very interesting case indeed, to say the least. Let's join the judges now for another session of After the Verdict.
I have to say, I have never in my life heard of somebody coming to look at a building, a multi-unit building, 3 or 4 units, whatever it was, and say, oh, one of the people there had a cat? No, I don't want
You
that
know
building.
that didn't happen. That was completely
just-
made up.
So that really
But it just, these
smell
circumstances, it just smelled bad. You know, where you're going to turn around and tell somebody, hey, you have 48 hours to hand me $300-something or else. And then say, oh, and by the way, since you left, you owe me, you know, now, all this time later, you left, so you owe me 2 months.
Right. Another thing that came through in this case is the idea that now landlords are going to have to be a little bit more careful about how they show apartments like this and make sure the people who are showing up are going to have masks, are going to use sanitizer on their hands, et cetera, and give the tenants some modicum of comfort that, you know, they're not going to have their place contaminated.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a court in the land that would say, hey, you're breaching your lease by not allowing complete strangers to walk in your house. Right. And if you have a comorbidity, you don't care that someone has a rag over their face. I mean, the irony is that in the state of Florida, you know, he could have put this landlord in such a bad position.
Oh, God. He could have just camped out there.
Yeah,
He'd still
the guy
be
wouldn't
there
have
with
been able
no
to
end
sell
in
the
sight.
place.
There'd
He
be
couldn't
no
have
end in
sold the
sight
place.
now.
He'd say, I'm not paying rent, and I'm not...
Oh, it would have cost the landlord thousands and thousands.
And then for him to turn around and file a lawsuit against the guy for 2 months' rent, it's just out of control.
Yeah, it was tough.
So John from Spokane wants to know, what's one of your favorite cases you've had in the People's Court? Well, one that I remember is there were 2 women who were in a relationship together and they wanted to have a baby. So they asked one of their friends to donate the sperm, which he did. And they were going to use a turkey baster. It did not work initially. So they wanted him to do it not just once every other day, but every day. And eventually he said, I'm pooped out, I'm not going to do it. And they ended up suing him. The reason that's really interesting to me is that one of my law school professors has a daughter who did exactly the same thing. And it was a Thanksgiving night and they used a turkey baster. Guess what? She got pregnant.